In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrupted, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
It pertains to the problem of the brothers who are with you in their unfortunate celibacy and lack of availability of wives for them in the conditions that have been imposed on them. We pray to God to release them. I wrote Dr. Al-Zawahiri and consulted with Shaykh Abu Yahya. Dr. Al-Zawahiri has written us his opinion. As we see it, we have no objection to clarifying to the brothers that they may, in such conditions, masturbate. Since this is an extreme case, the ancestors approved this for the community. They advised these young men at the time of the conquest to do so. It has been prescribed by the legists when needed. And there is no doubt that these brothers are in a state of extreme need.
The non-standard assembly.
What the fuck is wrong with this?
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
All right. Welcome to Abercast. I'm John. Hot on the heels of the 9/11 in Context Part 1, where we tracked the long chain of events starting at the Ottoman defeat at the gates of Vienna in 1683 to the formation of what would become Al-Qaeda. Meaning, Osama bin Laden is in the picture as the financier, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed as the man that inherited Ramzi Youssef's sort of Acme blueprint book, full of plots. He emerges as the mastermind. They have training resources in place that were available and being used since the 80s, with a guy by the name of Sergeant Ali Mohammed translating materials right out of Fort Bragg and the JFK School of Special Warfare. That means assassinations, asymmetrical warfare, hijacking planes, and kidnapping people. There was a recruitment resource available as the U.S. troops were still hanging around Saudi Arabia after the first Gulf War, and to some of those Saudis, well, at least 19 of them, it looked like a foreign occupation force to revved up Muslims. And also there was a religious legitimacy at the time, because the blind sheikh was still out there. Even after he got arrested, I mean, they didn't kill him like they should have. They just put him in prison for the rest of his dirty life. So, I guess what all this means is, if you're interested in this part 2, you probably should have listened to part 1. So just go ahead and pause it and go back if you haven't. If not, continue ahead, brave soldier. But that's just to recap the last episode. Before we get into all of this, just want to remind everybody that Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell is going to be available very soon. If you sign into the newsletter, there's a link in the show notes. I'll go ahead and send you a free digital copy of it. You can check it out. I just want to share it with everybody. As far as the newsletter is concerned, we pretty much leave you alone. It used to be like a once a month thing, but now it's just whenever I have time to do something with it. So you could sign in, get the free book, sign out if that's what you want to do. It's just a fun way to support the show, and it's a good way for you to kind of get a sample of the kind of comic books that we do here. The premise behind this issue, this chapter of the larger thing, is this guy who feels like his life has been ruined by these events that have taken place, where he had we'll say a slight disagreement with an archangel, a fallen, well, he wasn't fallen at the time, he's certainly fallen now, and a demon lord, and he figures out a way to get to hell to exact revenge. It's an open love letter to spaghetti westerns, especially the Sergio Leone ones. I mean, I wrote the whole thing listening to Ecstasy and Gold, and I pay a lot of tribute to those movies in that. So there you go. So if you just want to check out one of the comics and you don't want to have to pay for it, there's a great way to get a digital copy for nothing but an email address, and then you can just take that right away from me. So there, enough of that. Another great way to support the show that doesn't cost you anything is iTunes rate and review. I got like one review up there. It's 5-star. I love it. Thanks, Josh. But let's see if we get some more. Another great way to support the show is just word of mouth. If you are a weirdo that likes the topics that we talk about on the show, then probably you know another weirdo that likes the topics that we talk about on this kind of show. So you can, it'll give you guys something to talk about. Or, you know, if you really want to support the show, the best way to do it is to pick up some books. You know, I'm not out here fucking selling you guys space age underpants or boxes of like granola or shit that they deliver to your house, because that's not any of my fucking business. I don't give a fuck what underpants you wear or what fucking snack foods you eat or delivering this shit to your house. Like, I don't give a fuck about any of that. What I want is, if you guys like weird stories, then I got some fucking comic books for you. If you like weird long forms, I got some fucking graphic novels for you. So there you go. You can find all that stuff at stigmatastudios.com. Oh, I gotta remember to do that. You know, our stories are of blood. Our stories are of bullets, booze, blood, and blasphemy. So come and check us out. stigmatastudios.com. All right, so here we go. We're going to get into this. We're going to whether you like it or not. I'm going to check this. Make sure that's on silent to get lubed up here. So these episodes, besides It's our 50th episode anniversary. Last show. This is episode 51, and the awesomeness of getting this new comic out. You know, I felt like I would just ram some content your way and just do another episode. These episodes started when talking or listening to people, not calling anybody out, play nice with everybody, but not calling out anybody, but listening to people trivialize and kind of minimalize the mainstream sort of story of 9/11, where they're like, oh, you just think like some 19 dudes from Saudi Arabia just grabbed box cutters and they did this, and they don't understand how far back this thing has been was building up, especially to the actual events in 9/11. So the first episode in this series was called Putting 9/11 in Context. And we're still doing the same thing, because I didn't take us all the way there, and I'm probably not going to get all the way there in this episode either. But I want to kind of like diffuse that idea from these people about, it was just so easy, like these 19 guys just got on the thing and they just did this. It wasn't that. There was a lot of stuff. In this episode, we're actually going to get, besides the actual terrorists and the people doing this, and, I'm going to go ahead and state it again real clear at the beginning of this episode. I'm not talking about mini nuclear bombs or like any of that shit, or like directed space fucking weapons or magic wizardry. Like, I'm pulling these towers down. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about Wahhabists. I'm talking about jihadists, and bringing the fight to America in ways that it's clear when we get to the end of this that a lot of people saw coming, but no one did a fucking thing about. So that's what we're talking about. I want to demystify that just in that sentence. What, you just think it was 19 guys with box cutters? No, there's a lot more to it, and we're going to get into it. And I'm actually going to start pointing fingers to people about this. God, we haven't even really started this fucking show yet. That's the whole music. Well, I get my brain back going. Okay, so I want you to mix. There we go. I got it. So go ahead and mix yourself up a gin jihad. I'm actually drinking whiskey tonight. It's like going home, It's like visiting. It's like going to a high school reunion, mixing up a great gigantic thing of whiskey in a mason jar. Just there's something about being American in a fucking mason jar, drinking out of a dirty mason jar. So that's what I'm drinking tonight. But whatever. The gag is to mix up a gin jihad. So that's what you guys are gonna do. Mix it up. Put it on your desk. Pass on drinking it. Don't drink it a whole bunch of times. And then we're going to continue our examination of 9/11, and we're going to put it into context. So, like I said before, this whole thing is about that word just in a sentence like, oh, you just think it's 19 Saudi Arabians with box cutters that could do this. Like, don't you understand there's like aliens and HARP and directed alien space weapons and the secret space program, and there was a base on the moon that shot plasma energy down. Like, enough of that. And if you want, we could talk about how fire melts steel if you want. If you want to talk about it, we can. So come at me, bro, and you better guard your neck, because I'm sick of this shit. So my answer to all that is no. Not just 19 guys with box cutters did this, and we need to put it into context, and we need to look at the world-class, colossal combination of events that put into motion at the right time, the right people in the right place, that went on to change the world. All right.
The non-standard assembly.
Well, I said
the return.
I'm having a real hard time with my soundboard, Joe. out there, folks. I'm so sorry. One of these days, I'm going to figure this shit out. I've only been podcasting since 2011. All right, so I feel like I need to couch kind of like my rant before the commercial in some facts. Like, Rosie O'Donnell, when she gets out there and she says fire can't melt steel, she's not a scientist. She's never blown anything up. And I'm not claiming that I've ever blown up a building, especially one as big as the trade centers. However, I was a combat engineer. I've blown up many stuff. I'm a blow stuffer. I spent a lot of time around explosives. I know all about wiring things up to explode. So I'm not saying, in the civilian realm, I'm not saying in controlled demolitions, I'm not saying I know how to implode buildings, especially ones that are built like the trade towers were, because they were built from the outside in. Everyone talks about these steel on the outside structure things and how small the windows were. Everybody talks about all that stuff. So I'm just saying, when a dipstick like Rosie O'Donnell gets out there and says that, fire doesn't melt steel, like, I'm just sorry. Like, I'm just sorry. Okay, like, you'd listen to whatever millennial podcast where the guy's like, and fire doesn't really melt steel. I'm Joe's out there, everybody. I'm shooting straight with you. So, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physicist. I'm not whatever. What I am is I'm a combat engineer, and I've seen explosives do some crazy fucking shit. All right. So there you go. There's my bona fides. if you want to get into it. So after the 93 World Trade Center bombing, these fucking guys were off to the races. They manufactured 5 1,500-pound bombs, and they started planning what was called the Day of Terror event. They were going to blow up the Holland Tunnel. They were going to blow up the Lincoln Tunnel. They were going to blow up the Washington Bridge. They were going to blow up the UN, which, I'm not sure that's even such a bad idea. And they were going to blow up the FBI building in Manhattan. All 5 bombs were going to go off simultaneously, cutting any escape out of Manhattan. And thousands of people would have drowned just in the tunnels alone. We're not talking about falling off the bridges or like any weird stuff like that. Like, come on, Spider-Man, where are you? Law enforcement focuses on this blind sheikh because he's out there radicalizing believers. Like I said, he's the part of this puzzle that gives these guys religious legitimacy because he's an actual Islamic scholar. He's like he's like a fucking comic book villain. This guy, like, he wears a Santa Claus hat and like Blues Brothers Ray-Bans. But when he takes his sunglasses off, he's got like this one just fucking gnarly like marble of an eye rolling around in there, and he doesn't even have a good story. It's not like he got like acid splashed in his face or anything. He had childhood diabetes. He went blind. So I don't know. I guess they must have had like crayons and with Braille or something, or maybe an audiobook. I don't know. Insert the Audible commercial right here. We're at 18 minutes and 17 seconds. So go ahead and put the Audible commercial right here. Audible, if you're listening. Audible actually passed on doing commercials for the show. They were like, no. We heard your Nazi blowjob joke story, and we're not going to be any part of that. I got to focus. Oh, the agents, they had an agent on the inside, and he was talking to this blind sheikh on a wire, and they got him talking about this planned bombing. I think this is where the blind sheikh was like, no, don't bomb the UN. The UN's full of good guys, people that are sympathetic to us, so don't bomb them. Also, if you bomb them, everyone will see us as an enemy instead of just the great Satan and the littler Satan. So he said, like, don't bomb that, bomb something else. And the law enforcement people at the time were like, hey, that makes him complicit, right? That makes him complicit. So they arrested his dirty ass and they put him in jail forever. I don't know if this dude's still alive. He's never going to see the light of day again. But across the world in the Philippines, there was a plot that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi Youssef were connected to called Operation Bojinga, which sounds hilarious. It sounds like that nerd from the Big Brain Theory, where doesn't he say Bojinga all the time? Which so this Bojinga, Operation Bojinga, like the Jews have Operation Wrath of God. These guys come up with Operation Bojinga. Credibility fading. Which, so this Operation Bojinga was when a number of planes would blow up in midair simultaneously. They were starting to mess around with liquid bombs. And this was made, the last good Die Hard movie, the third one, where they're like stuck in New York or whatever, before he was like fist fighting airplanes. The one with Zeus. Samuel Jackson. I want to see a list of parts that Samuel Jackson pass on, by the way. This fucking guy will be in any fucking thing. Anyhow, they had the binary liquid bombs in that. So that was like they had their finger on the pulse of the time, because these terrorist assholes were experimenting with liquid bombs at the time. This was a big pre-9/11 blueprint. So we start to see elements of the 9/11 plan starting to be thought about, like where they're talking about hijacking a number of planes instead of just one, instead of just going like, hey, fly me to Cuba so I could be with my fucking shitty communist brothers or whatever. Like they're taking these planes over to blow them up. Now, they also had this big hang up on doing a bunch of stuff simultaneously. We're going to get into that in a minute, where they're just like, we're going to just take these 2 or 3 or number of things and make them happen all at once. We're going to show them how organized we are. We're going to, So also in the Philippines, there was a plot revealed where these guys were going to try to blow up the Pope. And this is a part of a story that I took and totally stole and used it for one of the endings of the Dajjal Jihad book, where they blew the Pope up. He was in England visiting at the time, and I'm actually going to start writing the follow-up where we get to meet the new Pope, who is, I don't want to say too much, he's the Crimson Pope. He's a warrior Pope like Giles DeVore. Anyhow, we were just talking about the Dajjal Jihad, so let's do this. I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if I talked about it. My wife is a burlesque performer, and she has a big show coming up next weekend. And she's doing... the song she's dancing to is Rob Zombie's Pussy Licker song. And I'm working on a hat. Like, I'm working on some of her gimmick for her or whatever, but she's practicing, like, nonstop. So if you're picking up some ambient Rob Zombie Pussy Licker music on the microphone, that's what's going on. Don't think that I'm not paying attention. I'm, like, listening to Pussy Licker in one ear and talking to you guys out of the other, or whatever. So, yeah, just heads up. It might be out there. I try to take care of the audio quality of the show a little bit, so I just want to give you guys a heads up. Pussy Licker, everybody. If you're in the Pittsburgh area next weekend, go to Club Cafe. I think they're doing the late show. It's at 10 o'clock. Doors at 10, I think, or 10:30. You can find it at the Club Cafe Live.com, I think. If you're in the area, check it out, everybody. I'll be there. Because they put me to work. I kind of do make sure they get through the crowd okay, if you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, anyhow, if you hear Pussy Licker, that's what's going on. It's not me. And that's why you hear it. And by the way, if you're in the Pittsburgh area or relevant, it's a great kind of date night atmosphere. Anyhow, I know we're going to talk about Osama bin Laden. I'm bin Laden out, y'all. In 1996, bin Laden issues his first fatwa against the U.S., and it's called the, quote, Declaration of War against Americans occupying the land of the two holy places, unquote. Again, branding problem. The guy's got a huge branding. You got to tighten that up. This is right up there with Operation Bojingas. In 98, he releases another fatwa. I don't know what the name of this one is. I was trying to find a website that had the fatwas so I could actually read what he says. And that's when I found this email that he wrote about the jihadis, if they're able to masturbate or not, that I read during the cold open. It cracks me up. It cracks me up. This guy is a fucking micromanager. We all know, we've all had bosses like this guy where he was like, as we see it, we have no objection to clarifying to the brothers that they may, in such conditions, masturbate, since this is an extreme case. The ancestors approved this for their community. They advised the young man at the time of the conquest to do it. It has been prescribed by the legists when needed. There is no doubt that the brothers are in a state of extreme need. So what is that? I want to know what... None of their cousins are around. There's no goats. It's actually like funny. I got this from fuck man, I can't remember the name of the magazine that wrote this. This gem of a piece of information was released by the government in, I don't know when it was released, but they released 49 documents seized from bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. The fourth and final batch of bin Laden documents made public since 2012. And this letter, if you guys want to find the whole thing, like I said, I can't remember what website, what magazine or whatever I pulled this from. It was something like, I want to say it was Business Times or something, I don't know. But the name of the article is Osama bin Laden's secret masturbation fatwa, which is totally clickbait because it's not really a fatwa, but it is sort of like rules that he's making. It's how sexual torment of Islamic radicals helps explain the genesis of jihad violence. And this is what I'm saying the whole time. This is actually why in the Jinn Jihad, the lamp that the genie is in at the beginning of the story is like a gigantic brass cock, because these guys are so repressed. As a matter of fact, here I have this other thing where Richard Dawkins. So this is in that same article. Like I said, I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the magazine. They're online, and if you just Google search Osama bin Laden's secret masturbation fatwa, or maybe just Osama bin Laden's fatwa, because I think that's what I Googled to find this in the first place. In the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, the evolutionary biologist and world-famous atheist Richard Dawkins poured scorn over the notion that the 19 hijackers were motivated by thoughts of injustice. On the contrary, he insisted, what they really wanted to do was to get laid, referring to the martyr's reward of 72 virgin brides. He claims that the testosterone-sodden young men were too attractive to get women in this world, might be desperate enough to go for 72 private virgins in the next. Hear, hear, Dawkins. Anyhow, where was I? That was all, yeah, that's the cold open of the show was all about that. I'm having fun tonight, guys. Like, I feel like this is kind of like a bonus episode. I don't even know how many people are going to listen to this. So this is going to be dropping in the same week as the first one. I'm not sure. Okay, so he's releasing these fatwas. And in the 98 one, he releases a fatwa naming every American and their allies as an enemy of Islam, and that they should be killed. Lots of fatwas, this guy. He actually, I've seen things while I was researching this, a good research tool. I watched that 3-part history thing, The Road to 9/11 or whatever, and then there's this Diary of a Terrorist called maybe Path to 9. I don't know, whatever it is, but that's where a lot of this information comes from. So there, go check that out if you want in-depth shit. Like, if you don't want to just listen to me babble about this. Anyhow, I read that or heard that they did, he's declared war on the U.S. at least five times publicly. So you have to think, like, this is in 98, he's doing his fatwa. And this fatwa, this is where fatwa, so, this is like leading right up to it. And we're going to get into this a little bit later. Actually, I think I might have a whole other episode in me about the Bill Clinton fiasco of why he couldn't get this guy or didn't get this guy. We'll talk about more about that later. But like, he's releasing fatwas. He's declaring war on U.S. like every year leading up to 2001 or 2000 or whatever, 99. And everyone's just like, yep, whatever. Why should I believe this guy? I mean, I gotta save all this till the end. Okay. So there's a lot to say about sexual repression as a motivating factor of jihad. Does this sound like 19 regular fools rolled out of their bed one day and did this? They rolled out of their bed, they opened up their junk drawer in their kitchen and found a box cutter and was like, yeah, let's go do this. Is it what it sounds like to you? These 19 people were lunatics. I agree with Dawkins. They were backed up. Goat fucking savages. Dawkins didn't say that. I said that. But let's get back to it. I gotta manage my. At this time, Osama bin Laden's hanging out in Afghanistan, and a familiar face shows up, Dr. al-Buhari. And Osama bin Laden and al-Buhari sort of sit down, and they start kind of like making plans to change the world. So, August 7th, 1998. We're creeping up, everybody. We're getting close. Two almost simultaneous bombings of U.S. embassies take place. One in Kenya and one in Tanzania. Suicide bombers. 235, I think, dead. Thousands wounded, mostly Kenyans and Tanzanians. We were totally taken by surprise. We're like, we don't know where this came from. Even though, like I said, they just kept warning us. They just kept sending fatwas. Now, they weren't like sending stuff to the White House being like, hey, we're going to fuck your shit up. But what they would do is like what they do to like Al Zahira nowadays, where they send, these communiques to friendly newspapers in the West. Like, there was an Arab-speaking Muslim newspaper in London at the time, which is where they would release these communiques to. So they would send them out, and these people would, like, plaster them. So Americans, the standard American, had never heard of Osama bin Laden or Al-Qaeda at this time. All the way up until the World Trade Center. the second World Trade Center, people hadn't heard of this guy. So when the newspaper starts like putting up pictures of him, and they were like, we're pretty sure this is the fucking guy that did it. To most Americans, they're like, wow, that's miraculous. How do they know this already? Dudes, that's what I'm saying. You have to put this stuff in context when you're talking about it, because once you get through this, he was already on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. He was not a stranger. He was a stranger to you because all you listen to is the fucking news. But he didn't just show up out of nowhere. They weren't just like, hey, we need a scapegoat, pick this guy up off the wall, grab his picture for me so we can put it up on the thing, which is some shit that people believe. People are like, no one heard of this guy until the day of September 11th. Then they just put his picture up everywhere. That is wrong. That is wrong. He's been around for a long time. As a matter of fact, I think I made the case. If I didn't, I'll probably make it tonight, that he actually worked for the CIA at one point in time, I think. I'm sorry. He worked for CIA at one time. I'm trying to break that habit. All right, so we were totally taken by surprise. 13 days later, William Jefferson Clinton missiles the shit out of 2 empty camps. And this is going to wind up developing into an embarrassing habit of the Clinton era that no one remembers. Everyone's like, yeah, I remember he was fighting for us. He wasn't getting his dick sucked. He was shooting missiles at Al-Qaeda. What he did is he blasted hundreds of dollars worth of empty tents with millions of dollars of missiles. All the while elevating Osama bin Laden to a rock star of the Muslim world. So at the time, they were still treating this as a crime. They wind up flying hundreds of FBI guys to do investigations to these bombings. And I guess if you're going to investigate them, you needed FBI guys because it's technically our real estate in these 2 countries, since they were our embassies or whatever. But this is also a staple of the Clinton era. They were treating even though these guys declared war on us, they were stuck in the symmetrical mind frame of the difference between a military action, a difference between intelligence gathering, and a difference between law enforcement. And they only blurred the lines when it helped the Clintons' political problem. Because that's what he says. He was like, this is an intelligence gathering. This is an intelligence problem. This is not an FBI problem. We're going to get deep into this fucking thing in a little bit. But that was his thing. So if it was an intelligence problem or if it was a law enforcement problem and not so much an intelligence or a military problem, why are you shooting missiles everywhere? They're fucking blasting missiles. They would make fun of us in these third world countries where they're like, oh yeah, Uncle Sam's a mad bomber because we're just fucking throwing missiles at empty camps in the middle of the desert. So CNN has something to talk about other than Bill Clinton getting his dick sucked by his chubby intern. Al-Zawahiri and bin Laden continue to plan their next moves. While these FBI guys were there, this one dude, they arrested someone that they thought was the bomber. It wound up being the bomber for sure. And they wound up getting a phone number out of this guy. And the phone number they got goes to this, where's it at? Of course, I didn't write it down. I'm like, I'll remember this. The phone number that he got went to some little building in Yemen, I think. And this building was it was the main, command center between bin Laden, who's the financier, and, all the different agents that they have working out there. That's how this fucking bomber knew what this phone number was. The only reason I mention it is because it becomes important. So Clinton goes on this wild missile attack. 70-something, quote, camps, unquote, were bombed. Pharmaceutical factory was bombed. He's blasting everybody but bin Laden. All of these in an obvious attempt to distract from to distract Americans from the old cigar and the intern maneuver, the old let's hide the crooked patriot game. I don't remember writing that. So this clown, okay, we're going to talk about, I think that this is one of the bad actors in the White House at this time. This guy, Richard Clark. He starts coming onto the scene, and he's this White House counter-terrorist guy, and for my money, he should be in Leavenworth for treason, making big rocks into small rocks for the rest of his fucking days. There are dozens of these instances where this dude calls governments and is like, yo, we got an asset right here, and he's on the ground and he's looking right at Sheikh Allah peanut butter and jelly sandwich, who happens to be on our top 10 most wanted list for bombing schools and fucking nuns with scimitars. Can you go pick him up, please? And we'll be right there. We're flying. We're going to be there to pick him up from you when you go grab him. And mysteriously, Sheikh Allah peanut butter and jelly sandwich gets away. It's not the government. It's not the government of Jake and Jackie Stand that's to blame. It's this fool for taking it. This fool is taking it. Because he's purposefully warning these people, and he's trusting these governments for doing the right thing. When they're not doing the right thing, they would actually side on this guy's part. They think that you're the gigantic big Satan. You're bombing the shit out of everybody, and you think that they're going to go pick shit up. So is this more, we're going to hear this, is this more of what's called bureaucratic incompetence? Is this more unintended consequences? 16 months before 9/11, there's this big meeting of the Legion of Doom in Yemen. Not the wrestlers, Lex Luthor, Solomon Grundy, Cheetah, Sinestro, like that Legion of Doom. Not the What a Rush Legion of Doom. So they're meeting in Yemen, in this building that the phone number is talking about. Yeah, so it was Yemen. That the FBI guy found. You know what I'm talking about? The FBI was there. So, okay, 16 months before 9/11, there's this big meeting of the Legion of Doom in Yemen, in the building that the phone number that they found. The FBI, the CIA, the Keystone Cops, the Three Stooges, and Officer Big Mac are all wandering around with their thumbs up their asses because there's a massive communications breakdown. Now, you're like, how can there be a massive communications breakdown? I'm going to tell you in a little while why there was a massive communications breakdown. However, right now, you just have to believe there was a massive communications breakdown. It happened because this event went off. All these members, the Legion of Doom, Lex Luthor, the Joker, the Riddler, Sinestro, Cheetah, Solomon Grundy, fucking Mirror Master, Captain Cold, they were all there, and no one fucking did anything about it. They were like, hey, isn't today the day that Legion of Doom meeting is happening? And they're like, fuck, we didn't even send anybody. Do we have any drones in there? Like, what? I don't know. So, at this time, also, members of the hijackers start showing up in the U.S. Is this yet another case of bureaucratic incompetence? Is this another unintended consequence? The flight school... There's this flight school mystery in Venice, Florida, where these guys were being trained. There was a CIA was running this little airstrip in Venice, Florida. Right next to this airstrip was a flight school. Running up to 9/11, 40% to 50% of the students were Arabs in this flight school. Is this bureaucratic incompetence? Is this unintended consequences? This is just some fools with box cutters, right? In 2001, a CIA agent is handed a file or brief about a terrorist cell in Brooklyn with a fucking picture of Mohammed Atta. There was this thing called Able Danger. It was part of this big data gathering program where this computer was like collating all this data, and it actually discovered these guys just by looking at data. So thank you, Google. I appreciate that. And all you people that are like, yeah, I don't care if Google's watching me. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Think about that shit. If they can figure that out, they can figure out what kind of fucking deodorant you wear. You know what I'm saying? And market it to you. It's all a marketing ploy. Anyhow, fucking picture of Mohammed Atta. He was the boss on the ground that was flying all these planes. This information is not disputed. This brief told them they were operative members of Al-Qaeda. They were making efforts in America, and they were affiliated with the Brooklyn cell who was responsible for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Because these individuals were here legally, the CIA could take no action or alert the FBI. Now, I want you to pay attention to that. Or alert the FBI. Legally, they were here legally, the CIA couldn't do anything to them or investigate them further, and they couldn't alert the FBI. Do you know why that is? I don't know. I don't know why. I'm gonna tell you why it is. I don't understand it. Is this all bureaucratic incompetence? Is this all unintended consequences? I don't know. October 2000, off the coast of Yemen, one of the most sophisticated destroyers in our Navy, DDG-67, the USS Cole, was taken out by a suicide bomber in a raft. Let that shit sink in for a second. A fucking raft? This fucking guy pedals a raft up to this boat and blows it up. Now, it didn't blow up the whole boat. It knocked blew a 40-foot hole into it, and it wound up killing 17 Marines, dozens other wounded. It seems like some sort of bureaucratic incompetence right there, doesn't it? So around this time, Clinton orders CIA and the military to find and kill bin Laden. And they do this 8 to 10 times. They find him. And then they go, hey, we got this guy in our sights. Can we kill him? And Bill Clinton goes, no, just leave him alone. I'm worried about the legality of it. I mean, this is a law enforcement issue. He's still tied up in this fucking thought that this is a law enforcement problem and this is not an act of war. I'm sorry. A lot of this is act of war to me. And this is not just hindsight. I remember, I'm old, right? So I remember 2000. I remember 1998. I remember hearing this about the Cole and being like, all right, let's get to it. Let's get busy. And then nothing happened. They sent some FBI guys to be like, okay, we'll go investigate this fucking boat with a gigantic hole in it. That's what they do. They send fucking FBI guys to go look at the hole and be like, yep, that was an explosive. They fucking blew a hole in the boat. And they're still thinking this is a law enforcement problem. It's so dogged. And I mean, I clearly remember this being like, okay, well, this is an act of war. It's not to the president. The president's like, no, I don't know the legality of killing this guy that blew a 40-foot hole in my fucking favorite boat. And killed a bunch of my boys. So Clinton passes on killing bin Laden 8 to 10 times. And actually, at this point in time, the show is going to be winding down here in a little bit. But I have so much information on this Clinton thing. There might actually be a part 3 to this fucking thing. And I know I keep saying I'm all bin Laden out. I'm all 9/11 out already. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Nazi blowjobs again. I don't know. But I think there might be a whole other episode wrapped up in this. Depends on if I want to tell it or not. But it's the best episode if I do, because it just shows. Gotta tease it. Okay, remember at this time now, mere months away from 9/11, this is the summer of 2001, Deputy Attorney General, and believe this, if fucking pinch me if you don't believe this, Deputy Attorney General and future member of the 9/11 Commission, this lady named Jamie Gorelick, sent a memo to CIA and FBI limiting their collaboration, intelligence, law enforcement. Remember what I just read? Remember what I just said? Remember what I just said when Abel Danger was able to make the connections between this Brooklyn Al-Qaeda cell? Because these individuals were here legally, again, another bout of bureaucratic incompetence, I'm sure. These individuals were here legally. The CIA could take no action or alert the FBI. This is why. It's because they call this Gorelick's Wall. It's Jamie Gorelick sent this memo to CIA and FBI limiting their collaboration, difference between intelligence and law enforcement. So traditionally, the CIA and FBI they've had this thing called the Chinese Wall for a long time. And this wall is there to protect each one of their sources from legal prosecution, because the CIA hires a lot of shitty fucking people, because that's the people that are in these environments where it's just like this guy that the FBI had. You know, he's in there, he's pretending to they're actually making bombs. They're in this warehouse in Brooklyn making bombs for this Day of Terror thing that I talked about at the beginning of the episode. So if the CIA had this guy's number or whatever, they might try to use him or whatever. But since the Joint Terrorism Task Force and an FBI agent was handling him, so, you know, it just breaks it up and makes sure that they're not competing for, you know, the goodies or whatever that these agencies are giving them, and or they're making sure these agents are fucking each other accidentally. So this Chinese wall's been in effect for a long time. But this Gorelick's Wall, Jamie Gorelick's Wall, is entirely different. And I found a great article talking about this. This is from the Washington Times, and the article is called Jamie Gorelick's Wall. I don't have like a date. I don't know when this was published, but you can find it easy online. I mean, I found it online. That's where this is all coming from. This disclosure that Jamie Gorelick, a member of the September 11th Commission, was personally responsible for instituting a key obstacle to cooperation between law enforcement and intelligence operations before the terrorist attack raises disturbing questions about the integrity of the Commission itself. Ms. Gorelick should not be cross-examining witnesses. Instead, she should be required to testify about her own behavior under oath. Specifically, Commission members need to ask her about the 1995 directive she wrote that made it more difficult for FBI to locate two of the September 11 hijackers who had already entered the country by the summer of 2001. This is unintended consequences. This is bureaucratic incompetence. Back to the article. On Tuesday, Attorney General John Ashcroft declassified a four-page directive sent by Ms. Gorelick, the number 2 official in the Clinton Justice Department, on March 4th, 1995, to Director Louis Freeh and Mary Jo White, the New York-based U.S. attorney investigating the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. This Mary Jo White was appointed. She was tapped by Janet Reno to go there to take over from law enforcement. She's a member of the Justice Department. A New York-based U.S. attorney investigating the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. In the memo, Ms. Gorelick ordered Mr. Freeh and Mrs. White to follow information-sharing procedures that go beyond what is legally required to avoid any risk of creating an unwarranted appearance that the Justice Department was using Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is called the FISA, F-I-S-A, warrants instead of ordinary criminal investigative procedures in an effort to undermine the civil liberties of terrorism suspects. At issue was the oft-noted wall of separation that prevents counterterrorism agents and federal prosecutors from communicating with one another prior to September 11th. Information collected under the special FISA warrants, which do not require probable cause, was generally not to be shared with personnel responsible for enforcing federal criminal laws, where probable cause must be demonstrated for a warrant to be issued, as lawyers authors David Rivkin and Casey Lee noted on our op-ed page yesterday, blah, blah, blah. Sorry for reading that. The practical effect of this wall was that counterintelligence information was generally kept away from law enforcement personnel who were investigating Al-Qaeda activities. But Ms. Gorelick's memo clearly indicated that the Clinton administration had decided as a matter of policy to go even beyond the law's already stringent requirements in order to further choke off information sharing. As Ms. Ashcroft noted during his as Mr. Ashcroft noted during his testimony before the September 11th Commission, all of this had a devastating effect into the investigation of Al-Qaeda operations in this country in the summer of 2001. For example, in late August, when CIA told FBI that Khalid Ali Mahandar and Nuwafa Al-Zami had entered the country, FBI investigators refused to permit criminal investigations with considerable knowledge about the most recent Al-Qaeda attacks to join the manhunt. Also, a criminal search warrant to examine the computer of Zacharias Moussaoui, whose interest in flying aircraft had attracted attention, was rejected because FBI officials were afraid of breaking Gorelick's wall. Ms. Gorelick has been among the most partisan and aggressive Democratic panel member in questioning the anti-terror efforts of the Bush administration. The nation deserves a full accounting of Ms. Gorelick of why the Clinton administration felt it necessary to go the extra mile in order to hamper the capability of law enforcement and intelligence agents to talk to one another. I'm sorry, that was disrespectful. If Mrs. Gorelick fails to provide this, her actions would bring serious doubt to the credibility of the commission. And this was never given. She never went under oath. She never explained herself. So that's what I'm saying. Bureaucratic incompetence? I don't know. Was it an unintended consequence? I'll tell you what it is. I mean, you don't want to hear this, but I'll tell you what it is. It's all about the massive Clinton crime incorporated. I mean, the Clintons were selling through the Lippo group. They were selling nuclear secrets, I guess, to Korea. They're actually why we're having to deal with Korea right now. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton are probably Sandy Berger and probably this Richard Clark fucking clown. They are the reason that we're having to deal with Korea right now. And ironically, if we don't do something about Iran, Obama and Kerry are going to be the reason that we're going to have to deal with Iran in 20 years. So, I mean, just let that fucking sink in. They were massively unethically doing stuff. So that's why Gorelick's wall was erected. And that's why I think that I'm actually going to have to do another one of these episodes just to get into the Clinton aspect of this fucking thing and how he just refused to kill this fucker when he had the chance. 8 to 10 times on record. The fucking Secret Service guy that carried the briefcase that had the nuclear button in it for Clinton wrote a book telling everyone exactly how, like, he was like, yeah, there was a sniper in this thing. He was pointing at him, and Bill Clinton wouldn't take the call from JSOC or whoever was dealing with it. We have him in our sights. We need an answer in 5 minutes. Anyhow, let's go do this fundraiser. Like, that's what I'm talking about. There might be a whole other episode after this. I don't know. It's not planned. Fuck, is it planned? Am I planning it right now in my head? Unintended consequences. So we all know what happens next. A day that changed the world, probably forever. All right. Final thoughts. When I first started this, with episode 50 or whatever, I wasn't to this spot where I am now, where, you know, like people were like, you know, Pearl Harbor was an inside job. They have like fancy acronyms for it. I can't remember what it is, but it's like, did they do it or did they let it happen? You know, and while I'm doing this research, like I found this guy, the CIA guy, and he's like, yeah, you know, that's what us intelligence guys do, is we gather the intelligence and we insert people on we penetrate, that's what he says, we penetrate, you know, these plots and we let it run. And sometimes we run risks when we let it run, but, you know, we run the risks to gather information. And the more and more I look at this, and the more and more I see, like, all the things, like, that have to click into place for all this to happen, you know, starting from the blind sheikh being able to get out of prison in Egypt and just get entrance, just to be able to jump on a plane and fly to Brooklyn with a visa. Like, he was here legally. Like, he was able just to get here. Like, that is the first, like, hey, I got a red flag. Inappropriate conduct on the field, you know, let's go back 5 yards. But all the way up, all through this shit is crazy. I'm not saying Bill Clinton ran some planes into the building, but I'm saying, like, there's a lot of troubling stuff in this episode. And like I said, if there's a third episode, if episode 52 is 9/11 in context part 3, you know, we're gonna get into it. And I have a ton of information. We're just like out of time a little bit. So that's my final thought. Thank you guys for spending your time with me, especially, you know, so much already. This is like hour 2 this week. You know, if you're up to date and listening, I really appreciate it. I love that you guys let me help you get through your day by listening to me bullshit about this stuff. Want to ask you, please support the show. I would love a rate and review. You know, Josh's rate and review is getting lonely out there. So, you know, the show, you know, you think like, oh, this guy just gets drunk and babbles at us for an hour. But the amount of research and stuff takes a ton of time. Like, it really does take a lot of time. So, you know, if you appreciate that or whatever, you want to support the show, sign on to the newsletter. Great. Like I said, I'll send you a free digital copy of Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell. If you do it this week only. So if you're not all caught up, you're listening to this like in 2020, it's not going to work out for you. But yeah, sign into the newsletter. Rate and review the show is also a great way, and the best way to do it is just to buy some books. You know, I gotta pay for server space and all this stuff, and plus, like, my time, like, take time out of doing comic books to research and do the show. So I love you, you love me. Let's make it official, everybody. You go to stigmatastudios.com to find everything. There's links to all my social media. I've been active on Instagram a little bit lately, showing off some upcoming stuff. If you're interested in that, society13.com. If you're like, God damn, John just got me through 2 hours of my fucking cubicle life this week. What am I going to listen to next? Go to Society13 or society-13.com. Check out, we got a bunch of great shows. History Goes Bump, The Lift, The Wicked Library, Prog Watch with the Prog Squatch. The Queens are coming back this week, everybody. I've really been waiting for that. They've taken the summer off, so I can't wait to hear what they've been up to. So you go there, check that out. Also, find me on Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. You go to stigmatastudios.com. There's all the little links up there at the top to all that stuff. And again, thank you guys for spending your time listening. And I know, like, this is coming out the week of 9/11, like the anniversary or whatever, so you're probably all 9/11'd out. Just hold tight, man. I think I got like one more episode and then we'll get on to something. I swear I'll do something fun next. You know, they all can't be Jewish wizards building statues that walk around and crush people, you know, Jewish wizardry or anything like this. They all can't be fun stuff like rocks that people sit on when they become kings. It can't just all be like that. So
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
We got to do some dark stuff too every once in a while. So again, thank you guys, and I'm really troubled. I'm not sure if I should play this. I reached out to a bunch of bands looking for permission to play covers of the one Cure song that I like. It's called Killing an Arab. I haven't heard back from these guys, but they seem like they have a sense of humor. So here you go. This is called The Surf Motherfuckers, and the Cure surf cover of Killing an Arab. I thought that would be a provocative, non-PC way to end the show. So here you guys go. Thanks again. See you probably one more time this week before it all gets done. Here you go. Killing an Arab, standing on the beach with the gun in my hand, staring at the sea, staring at the sand, staring down the barrel at an Arab on the ground.